Welcome students and families to our French immersion at Ottawa U or uOttowa. Um, I see we have a growing group, so maybe if I give it a few seconds and then I'll start in about a minute and introduce you to your speaker. All right, perfect. This interactive presentation will provide an overview of what the French immersion stream at uOttowa has to offer and will highlight the personal, professional, and academic advantages of continuing your post-secondary studies in French immersion. Learning about the application process, the French immersion entry test, scholarships, and supports for French immersion students. I'd like to introduce Libby Elder from the University of Ottawa, who will be talking to you about all these wonderful things in regards to French immersion at University of Ottawa. Thank you, Libby. Just a reminder for all participants, please refrain from inappropriate comments in the chat. If we do go down that path, then you will have to be removed from this particular webinar. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you, Ramona. Welcome everyone to the French immersion presentation for the University of Ottawa. Although we're speaking about the French immersion program, I will be giving this presentation in English, just in case we have any family members or guidance counselors listening in who maybe don't speak French or aren't as comfortable in French. So yeah, let's get started. I'll start the presentation just by introducing myself, telling you all a little bit more about who I am. So like I've said, my name is Libby. I am a liaison officer at the University of Ottawa. I'm originally from Guelph, Ontario, and I studied in the French immersion program all throughout elementary and high school. And then I moved from Guelph to Ottawa to study sociology at the University of Ottawa with French immersion. And it was really the French immersion program that convinced me to choose uOttowa. I actually had almost the same presentation that I'm giving to you right now in one of my high school French classes. And it was really from that day on, I knew uOttowa was the right fit for me. So it's super exciting that I get to present this for all of you today. But enough about me, we'll jump right into the presentation. There's three main points that I will go over today. The first being why speak French and the benefits of being bilingual. The second being the immersion program that we offer at uOttowa. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the student experience as a French immersion student on campus. You'll notice that the slides are in French, but I will be speaking in English. So let's jump into the first question of why you should speak French or the benefits of speaking French. You can see here that we speak French all across the world. In fact, there are over 50 million French as a second language students around the world. So you can see with those numbers on the screen that, of course, we're learning French here in America, but also in Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa, and Asia as well. So you are definitely not alone on this journey of learning French as a second language. You can see that French is also the 5th most spoken language in general around the world. So the other 4, just so you know, are English, Hindi, Mandarin, and Spanish. So all of you listening, for all of the students listening, you already have a really great advantage because you speak at least 2 of the 5 most spoken languages in the world. But we also speak French all across Canada as well. So of course, we have our Francophone communities here in Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick. We also speak French out west, up north. We even have what are called the Fransaskois in Saskatchewan. And you can see on my screen that about 20% of the Canadian population speaks both French and English. And what's really cool is just here in Canada, we have over 30 different French accents. So no matter where you go in the country, French is going to sound different. I know when I moved from Guelph to Ottawa, my French sounded and still sounds quite different from those around you. Really, having an accent just shows where you come from and how you learned your language. So it's part of your identity. It's something you should be proud of. Next up, we can talk about job opportunities. So here on the screen, I have a few examples of employers who have hired co-op students from the University of Ottawa because they were looking for bilingual employees. So we can see Apple, Google, Microsoft, the United Nations, the Government of Canada are all looking for bilingual employees. And for me, it was really because of the French Immersion program and my bilingualism that I was able to get the job that I have today as a liaison officer with the University of Ottawa. Next up is self-development. So learning and practicing a second language is amazing for your personal growth and development. Let's say maybe you're interested in learning a third language or even a fourth language. Having already learned French will help you immensely with that. It also helps to develop other skills. So whether that's concentration, creativity, open-mindedness, empathy, learning and practicing your French helps to develop those other skills as well. And then finally, we like to say that learning a second language, it's kind of like a workout for your brain. So when you're using and practicing your French, you're giving your brain exercise and ultimately helping to protect yourself against certain diseases like Alzheimer's, for example. And then finally, we can talk about money, everyone's favorite topic. So in general, across Canada, bilingual employees, so those are employees who speak both French and English, can expect to make about 10% more than Anglophone employees, so employees who only speak English. And we see that this percentage actually grows to 20% where I am here in Ottawa, 30% in Toronto, and even 40% in Montreal. So part of this is because we look for bilingual employees for opportunities for bonuses or management positions, for example. So there's really a lot of opportunity to earn more money if you speak both French and English. Great, so that wraps up the first part of the presentation, all about the benefits of speaking French, being bilingual. So now we'll move on to the actual immersion program that we offer at uOttowa and what makes this program so awesome for students. But I'll start by giving you a bit more context. So at the University of Ottawa, we have 48,000 students, and we're actually the largest French-English bilingual university in the world. Of our 48,000 students, about 65% study in English, 30% study in French, and 5% study in our immersion program. So I know 5%, that maybe doesn't sound like very much, but 5% of 48,000 is still 2,400 students. So you are not alone, again, if you decide to study in French immersion at uOttowa. At uOttowa, we have 6 undergraduate faculties. So these are like the groupings of programs that you apply to directly from high school. We've got our 3 humanities faculties, including arts, business, and social science, and then 3 science faculties, including science, health science, and engineering. Across those 6 faculties, we offer over 80 programs that offer the French immersion option. So no matter what area or discipline you're interested in studying, there's going to be an option to study it with French immersion. And finally, the French immersion program. I think that these 3 points that I have up on the screen summarize the program really well. So you can see my first point, most students full-time students tend to take 5 classes every term. And to participate in the immersion program, we recommend that you take 2 out of those 5 classes in French. And that can be any class that's taught in French. So yes, it could be a French as a second language course where you learn about grammar, how to read and write in French, that kind of thing. But it doesn't have to be. It can be any course that's taught in French. So that could be your biology course in French or your history course in French. And then if you do that, if you take 2 classes in French every term, we give you $1,000 a year automatically, and you'll receive a mention on your degree for the French immersion program. So in order to be admitted to the University of Ottawa with French immersion, you will actually apply to a program that's offered in English with the French immersion option. And then how it works on our end is we evaluate your application for admission to the program in English. And if you meet all of the requirements for the program in English, that's great. We give you an offer of admission to the program in English with French immersion. But in order to keep that French immersion option on your offer of admission, you do need to pass a French immersion entry test. And really this test, it's just designed to make sure that you have the base skills required to succeed in the program. We're not looking for you to be perfect, so try not to stress too much. There's two parts to the test. The first part focuses more on your comprehension skills in French. So that includes like listening and reading. And then the second part focuses more on your writing and speaking skills. We say our test is about the same level as a strong DELF B1. So anyone listening, if you're planning to write your DELF exam, or maybe you already have, you are very well prepared for this test. Not something to worry about. For anyone listening who's in grade 12, we do recommend writing this test by May 1st. And this is just to ensure that you get your results from the test before course enrollment starts for your first year. But ultimately, as long as you pass before starting your studies at uOttowa, you're good to go. You can also rewrite this test if needed. So let's say in March of your grade 12 year, you try the test for the first time and it doesn't go so well, you're having a bad day, you don't pass. No stress, you just need to wait 2 months. So then 2 months later, in May, you could try the test again. Again, like I said, as long as you pass before starting your studies at uOttowa. And the final thing I'll mention is that there is no risk to applying with French immersion if you think you might be interested. So like I was saying, you're applying to a program that's offered in English with the French immersion option. So if something happens, if you change your mind or you can't pass the test, you'll still be admitted to the program in English without a French immersion. So really, I like to say, if you think you might be interested in French immersion, just give it a shot, see how it goes. You can drop it at any point and there's no penalty. I will also mention that when you request access to the entry test, we do also give you access to a practice test. So this is a great way to go and see sort of the types of questions, the difficulty level of the questions before you go and do the real test. Awesome. If you had any questions about that, feel free to leave them in the chat. We can come back to them at the end. Great. So we know at the University of Ottawa that studying in your second language is not easy. It's an extra challenge to do your post-secondary studies in your second language. So we have a ton of different resources and supports in place to help you succeed in the French immersion stream. So for the next few slides, I'm going to go over those resources and tell you a bit about them. The first thing is, as a bilingual university, we have a policy that permits our students to submit their assignments in French or in English, no matter the language of the course that they're taking. So this means even if you're taking a biology course in French, for example, you have the option to submit your assignments and write your exams in English if you want. Of course, we're always encouraging you to submit your assignments in French to practice your written French, but know that it is an option to submit your assignments in English as well. Really the only exceptions comes to language courses. So of course, if the purpose of a course is to learn a language, you won't have the option to submit your assignment in the other language, if that makes sense. Next up, we have something called accompanying language courses. And these are French as a second language courses that you can take alongside another content class that you take in French during your studies. And so I'm going to take an example to simplify it a little bit, but really the purpose of these courses is to help you develop the skills that you're going to need to succeed in whatever discipline it is that you're studying in French. So for my example, you can see, let's say you decide to take a psychology class in French in your first year. That's one that I took in French in my first year. For that psychology class, you will be in class for 3 hours every week, and the course is worth 3 credits. And that's the same for almost every course at uOttowa. You can see in the psychology class, you'll have the psychology professor who teaches the course in French. You'll have all of the Francophone students who chose to take that class. You'll also have some immersion students who chose to take that class. And then lastly, we throw in a French as a second language professor. So this professor, they're not a specialist in psychology. They are a specialist in French as a second language, and they sit in on every single one of those psychology classes. And then what we do for the accompanying language course is we take that French as a second language professor and all of the immersion students from the psychology class, and we put them in another separate class together. In this other class, that's where you work with your peers and you work with the professor to review what you've been learning in the psychology course in French. So you'll go over important vocabulary and again, practice whatever skills you're going to need to succeed in psychology in French. But where it gets really cool, you can see more at the top of the slide for the accompanying course, you are only in class for 1.5 hours every week. So it's half the amount of time, half the amount of work as a regular course, but it still counts for the same 3 credits. So this means for most students, this isn't an extra 6th class that you take on top of the regular course workload. For most students, this can count as one of your main 5 classes that you take every term. And the 2 courses I have on screen, those 2 courses combined, those can count as the 2 you need to take in French every term to participate in the immersion program and get that $1,000 scholarship per year. So I know this slide is a bit more complicated, so I'll maybe give you a couple seconds to put your questions in the chat if you have any. But if not, we will keep going. Okay, I'll move on to the next one and I'll check back if we have questions later on.
Actually, so,
sorry.
You know what? My apologies. Can I go over a couple questions right now? Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's take the questions we have now and then we can do some more at the end.
Do you need a specific certificate to be able to apply for French immersion program? Because I've already applied for health sciences with French immersion and I'm getting B1 DELF this month. I wanted to know if I need additional documents, but by the way, I'm an international student and French is my 3rd language and I also have core French. I've never been in immersion in 9 to 12.
Yeah, so there is no one specific certification or document you need to get into French immersion. Ideally, you just have to be coming from an English high school and be learning French as a second language. So that means you can be coming from the core French program, from the extended French program, or from the French immersion program. Really, we just want to see that you've taken advanced level French classes in grade 11 or 12. So if you're on track to write the DELF B1 exam, you're good to go. We don't need to see proof of that or anything. It's really just our own French immersion entry test that you need to pass to keep your spot in the immersion program.
Will the university send a link to the test after we are accepted?
Great question. So how it works is you get admitted to the program and we'll send you an email with all of the instructions, but essentially it's up to you to go and request access to the test. So you'll go into our language test portal and request access to the French immersion entry test. It might take a day or 2, maybe 3 to get access. And then once you have access, I recommend going through the practice test first, just to get familiar with the platform, see what kind of questions we're going to have, and then you go ahead and do the real test.
Is there a mark deduction if you submit in English?
Yeah, no mark deduction. It is nice to tell your professor that you will be submitting your assignment in the other language, in English, for example. But it's a policy for the whole university. So all students have access to this. Most of the professors at uOttowa are bilingual, so it's not really a big deal for them to correct an assignment in the other language. But if your professor doesn't happen to be bilingual, they will find someone else who's also specialized in that same area who speaks English to correct your assignment. So I recommend just giving your professor a heads up, but it shouldn't cause you any problems.
Okay, Are there life sciences as well in French immersion?
For life sciences, do we offer French immersion?
Yes.
Yeah. So at uOttowa, we don't have life sciences, we have science and health science. And for pretty much all of those programs, we do offer French immersion. The only programs where it's a bit more limited is with our engineering programs. But for science and health science, the majority of programs do offer.
If you accidentally apply to an English program and don't want to be in it, can you easily change to a French immersion?
Yeah, so when you apply, you actually do want to apply to a program in English, but you want to add that French immersion option. So you can go back into OUAC and edit your application. You won't need to change what program you apply to. You'll just need to go check yes to French immersion, kind of the same way if you're interested in co-op, to check yes to co-op. So it's good that you applied to the program in English. Just go back and add the French immersion option.
If you mainly speak French as a first language, does that increase your chances of being accepted?
Yeah, so it is important to note that this program isn't designed for students who are fully bilingual, who French is their first language. It's really designed for Anglophone students who are learning French. If you're coming from an English high school, but your first language is French, technically you do have access to this program if you want. It might help you with the entry test and passing the test, but ultimately the program is designed for students who are still in the process of learning French.
Okay, we'll take a break right now. We can carry on with questions in a minute.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so the next resource I will go over are qualitative grades, or pass-fail grades, sometimes is what we call them. So essentially at the University of Ottawa, students who are in an arts program, a business program, social science, or health science have access to qualitative grades for the courses that they take in French for their first 2 years. So I have another example on the screen. We have a student here who chose to take those 5 classes in their first year, and they decided to take biology and psychology in French. We can see that they didn't do quite as well in their classes in French, and they have an overall average of 76%. This student has the option to sort of hide their grades or request qualitative grades for the 2 classes that they took in French. So we can see with qualitative grades, this student, their average increases from 76% to 83%. So this can make a really big difference for students in the immersion program. It'll help you keep your average up. Maybe it makes it easier to keep a scholarship or keep your spot in the co-op program. But again, just note, unfortunately, engineering and science students don't have access to this. Moving on to scholarships. At the University of Ottawa, we have quite a few automatic scholarships. So these are ones that you do not need to apply for. We give them to you automatically. A good example is our admission scholarship. So this is based on your admission average, and you can get up to $3,000 for your first year. We also offer the French Studies Bursary. This is the same scholarship that I already mentioned, where if you take 2 classes in French every term, we give you $1,000 each year. So we can see with only these 2 automatic scholarships, you can get up to $7,000 to help finance your studies. At uOttowa, $7,000, that's equivalent to about 1 year of tuition fees for most programs. So a really great way to help finance your studies. If there are any international students listening in, you do not have access to the French Studies Bursary, but instead you have access to, at the bottom of the screen, you can see La Bourse d'Exonération Partielle. This is a very generous scholarship for international students. It will significantly reduce your tuition fees. Just note that you will need to take 3 classes in French every term rather than 2 to receive that scholarship. But I definitely recommend looking into that if you are an international student. So then on top of automatic scholarships, we have hundreds and hundreds of other scholarships that you can apply for. So the 3 examples I have on the screen are for students in the immersion stream, and they require applications. But I really want to emphasize the first scholarship you see on the screen, Bourse d'études postsecondaires en français langue seconde. With this scholarship, every year we give 350 students $3,000. You do need to apply, but it's super simple. It takes like 10 minutes to do. And the requirements are that you are in the immersion stream and that you're taking 2 classes in French every term. So last year, we didn't actually receive enough applications to give out all 350 scholarships. So last year, all students who applied and were eligible received this scholarship. So it's really worth your time to apply if you're in the immersion stream. Easiest $3,000 you'll ever get. Okay, awesome. So then on top of scholarships, the University of Ottawa were partnered with the organizations you see here on the screen to offer prizes for French contests. So writing, speech contests, video contests as well. So I really recommend to you to take a minute, do a bit of research, see if it interests you to participate in any of these contests, or maybe you're already participating through your French class. But we do offer prizes from $1,000 to $12,000 for each of these contests. So that's another really great way to help finance your studies. Okay, great. So a little summary. We talked about the option to write your assignments in French or English. We talked about accompanying language courses, qualitative grades, scholarships and contests, but the list of resources for immersion students does not end there. We have so many resources on campus that you can make use of. A great example is our French Immersion Mentoring Center. It's run by current upper year students in the immersion program, and they put on a lot of really fun activities, events, workshops, that kind of thing for other students in the immersion program. One of my favorite examples was Jeudi. So every Thursday, you get together with other immersion students to play board games in French. So it's a great way to practice your French in a more fun and relaxed environment. We have an academic writing help center that can help you with any assignments that you decide to write in French. We offer conversation workshops to help you practice speaking in French. We have Antidote on all of the campus computers. If you don't know what Antidote is, it's kind of like Bon Patron, maybe you know, but 1,000 times better. It's usually pretty pricey, but you can access it for free on campus. And then, of course, you also get access to all of the other supports and services offered by your faculty as well. Great, so to start to wrap up the presentation, I have a quick video here of some students who are currently studying in the immersion program who will share a little bit more about their experience in the program and the French immersion community on campus.
Je m'appelle Peter Nolte, je suis dans ma 3e année du programme en médecine moléculaire et translationnelle ici à l'Université d'Ottawa. Probably the most fun part of being in the immersion stream is definitely the community of other immersion students, because uOttowa is a very big university, but the French immersion community, while it is also a fairly considerable size, it's also very tight-knit. And so I know at the French Immersion Mentoring Center, we've had all kinds of like social and cultural events, from things like going to get free beaver tails and going to do escape rooms in French. And I think that like all these experiences to me are really like what define the fun part about French immersion.
Je m'appelle Camilla Marino, je suis en 2e année à l'Université d'Ottawa en communication et en sociologie. Just the fact that you get to meet new people and open the social circle was something that I found really, really helpful for my university experience. I love the French immersion community because at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. So we're all experiencing what it's like to study your program in your second language.
Being bilingual is going to allow me to better create cross-cultural connections and then work in like a globalized sphere throughout research. I would say to another potential thing that could be interesting to me would be more to go into like a healthcare profession like medicine or pharmacy. And in that case, I think once again, bilingualism would be a huge asset to be able to serve my clients in either of the official languages in Canada, which I think is actually really important when it comes to healthcare.
I think that learning a new language and improving your language skills is always a plus for the workplace, not only because there's so many more opportunities speaking new languages, but also the fact that you get to help to communicate with people and really connect with people that speak other languages.
Je m'appelle.
Okay, great. So to wrap up, I have a little recap here on the screen with some important dates you'll want to keep in mind. So as of right now, until mid-January, it's the time to apply to the University of Ottawa. again, like I mentioned, apply to a program in English with the French immersion option. And then at the end of January, if you have any questions about maybe the entry test, for example, you can reach out to our French immersion mentors. In March, that's when you'll likely start applying for scholarships. Maybe in March, you'll try the French immersion entry test as well. And then in May, 2 months later, you can redo the entry test if needed. And then at the end of May is also when we start course enrollment for your first year. June 2nd is the final deadline to respond to an offer of admission from the University of Ottawa. And then during the summer, it's up to you to practice your French before starting your studies at uOttowa in September. So if I could leave you with one message today, it is the message, Frenchify your life. So even if you decide not to continue your post-secondary studies in French, try to find a few ways to continue using and practicing your French. Even if it's as simple as just watching a show in French once a week, for example. But for me, I really enjoyed the French immersion program, and it was an excellent way to continue to work on and improve my French after high school. So that wraps up my presentation. I have a few resources on the screen if that interests you, our social media accounts, the liaison email address. So if you ever have any questions after today, feel free to shoot us an email at liaison@uottawa.ca. We do also have some more virtual information sessions coming up until the end of November. And we offer campus tours, both virtually and in person, all throughout the fall, if you're interested. Well, great. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Maybe we can take a few more questions now.
Yeah, perfect. The next person is interested in becoming a French teacher for the elementary level. Would they need to apply to the program in Bachelor of Arts first and then apply to BEd program later? Or what would be the process?
Great question. At the University of Ottawa, we don't have a concurrent education program, so you would need to apply to a regular undergraduate degree first and then to the Bachelor of Education. But we do have a program at uOttowa called Second Language Teaching, and you can specialize in English as a second language or French as a second language. So if you're interested in teaching French as a second language, I strongly recommend checking out that second language teaching program to do first before your Bachelor of Education.
Okay. This is a question on tuition reduction for international students. Is there such a thing if they pick French immersion?
Yeah, so French international students do have access to the French immersion program as well. Again, you would need to apply to a program in English with French immersion. And then as long as you're taking 3 courses in French per term, you have access to that differential tuition fee scholarship, which will significantly reduce your tuition fees.
I'm doing French immersion, the French immersion program. Would I be able to teach in Francophone schools or only FLS or FSL schools? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So at uOttowa, we have 2 teacher ed programs. One prepares you to teach in Ontario schools, and then the other one, prepares you to teach in English schools in Ontario. And then the second one prepares you to teach in French schools in Ontario. So technically, you could do the French immersion program during your undergraduate degree and then apply to the Bachelor of Education in French, the one that prepares you to teach in French schools in Ontario. There is a French test that you need to pass to get into that program. So if by the end of the 4 years, you feel confident in your French, you can go ahead and apply for sure. But just keep that in mind. It depends which BEd you apply to in which language.
For the PharmD program at Ottawa, is it only offered in French? And do they offer internships or co-op opportunities as well?
Yeah, great question. So the PharmD program is only offered in French at uOttowa for now. Students, I believe, are required to be bilingual for the program. You might have some placements or that kind of thing in English or in a bilingual environment, so that's important. So you can apply to it, but know that the content, like the whole program, will be offered in French. And yes, they do offer a lot of, I don't know the details off the top of my head, but there's lots of placements during the program in PharmD.
Is it possible to delay our first year if we decide to take a gap year
Mm.
or something similar and still be able to go into the French immersion program?
Yeah, so we do offer deferrals at uOttowa. So if you apply for the fall 2025 term and then something happens, it is possible for us to defer your admission another year. But really, we only grant deferrals in exceptional circumstances. So maybe you got really sick or a family member passed away, something very serious. We don't necessarily grant deferrals just because you want to take a gap year. What I recommend is if you know you don't plan on starting your studies next fall, just wait 1 year to apply. Or if you're not sure yet, apply for the fall 2025 term. And then if you change your mind, you'll just need to reapply again for fall 2026. And the deferral would apply to French immersion as well.
Okay, sorry. If I want to do linguistics, can I pick French?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. If you go on our website and just Google uOttowa French immersion, you'll see a list of programs that offer French immersion. Or if you have one of our review books, you can also find that online. Starting on page 38 is where we list every single program. If you see the little FI symbol, it means it offers French immersion. I would assume yes for linguistics, but I don't know off the top of my head. But most arts programs do offer French immersion.
Do automatic scholarships have an academic average range for marks that are needed?
Yeah, so for the admission automatic scholarship, there is a grade that you need. If you have an 85% average, we'll give you $1,000, 90%, 2,000, 95, 3,000. And so as long as whatever within, sorry, if you're in one of those ranges, we'll give you the appropriate amount of scholarship.
Does IB French also count as an advanced level French?
Yeah, IB counts as well, along with core, extended, and immersion.
Do CEGEP credits get transferred one-to-one into university credits for the immersion program?
Yeah, so there's no specific courses that you have to take for French immersion. It's just taking the courses required for your program in French. So it is possible to receive transfer credits if you're coming from CEGEP. We can't guarantee anything. This happens, the evaluation for transfer credits happens after you've been admitted. It'll all depend on what you studied in CEGEP, what you're studying at uOttowa, the grades you got. But students in general can get up to 1 year of transfer credits if they're coming from CEGEP to uOttowa.
Oh, sorry, you probably covered this, but do they offer? Are they asking if you offer business and accounting as well for French immersion?
Yeah, I believe all business programs offer French immersion. Yeah. Here, I'll maybe stop sharing my screen and I will go and find the link to our view book. I can put that in the chat, and then that's where you'll be able to see all of the programs that offer French immersion.
And someone's asking if you can repeat the mark breakdown for those scholarships.
Yeah, of course. Here, just give me one moment. Okay, so I just posted the link in the chat to our review book. It starts on page 38. That's where we show a list of every single program. You see a little FI symbol. It means we offer the French immersion option. Yeah, so for the admission scholarship, if you have an 85 to 90%, we give you $1,000. If you have 90 to 95, we give you $2,000. And then if you have 95 to 100%, we give you $3,000. And the nice thing about that scholarship is we always try and give you the most money that we can. So if you, at the time of admission, you have a 95 and we give you 3,000, and then it doesn't go so well for the rest of grade 12, you end with an 86, for example, we'll always honor the highest scholarship amount that we awarded you as long as you stay above that 85% minimum.
Is it possible for you to look at the last question? I don't want to.
Yeah, in the Q&A section?
Yeah,
yeah,
the last.
Sorry?
About applying to international, applying to post-secondary.
Yes, okay, I see it. Yeah, so that is correct. The bourse d'études no, that's not correct. So the bourse d'études postsecondaires en FLS, you might have access to it as an international student, but the one you really want to know, I'll write it in the chat, is the differ. So the one international students really want to keep in mind is the differential tuition fee exemption scholarship. That's the one that will significantly reduce your tuition fees by taking 3 courses in French every term. The bourse d'études postsecondaires en français langue seconde, I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it should be open to both Canadian and international students. That is the one where you get $3,000. The only requirements are that you are in the immersion program and that you're taking classes in French each term. So you'll want to go Google that scholarship to see what the requirements are. But for international, I recommend the differential tuition fee scholarship. I did see one question way back here that I don't know if I addressed about the psychology course. So when I gave that example of the psychology course with the accompanying language course, that is not just applicable for psychology. Psychology is one example, but most big courses in your first and second year will have that option. So think biology or history or your business program. So it's not just psychology, that's one example. Any other questions?
What happens if you applied with an average of 86 but then end up with a 95? Does your tuition amount change?
Yeah, so it works the other way as well. If you're,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
It works the other way as well. So if your grades increase, we will increase your scholarship as well. We reevaluate over the summer once we've received all of the final grades.
And do you need to apply to differential tuition, or is it considered automatic?
It's automatic. So as long as you're taking 3 classes in French, it will be applied to your tuition fees automatically.
So there's a student who's talking about taking a grade 11 French immersion course that they're currently in, but they have trouble expressing themselves in French. However, with their biggest concern being their grammar. What course would they need to take at Ottawa for their first year?
Yeah, great question. I find that a lot of students have the same insecurities or fears about coming to uOttowa in French, is that they don't feel like they can speak well enough in French, or grammar is really difficult. What I tend to recommend to those students, and what really helped me, was taking French as a second language courses. So if you're in a program that has elective courses, I use those courses to take French language courses where I continue to learn the French language. And what's really neat about these courses at uOttowa compared to high school is that it's not just one general French course where you learn about speaking, reading, writing, grammar, all of that. You can pick specialized areas. So for example, I took a course all on speaking in French, and that was it. And that really helped me improve my skills. Or you can take a class fully about French grammar. So it really helps you sort of pick the areas you want to improve and work on those during your studies. So that's what I recommend. If you can, use your elective courses to take French as a second language courses, or take that accompanying language class. That can be really helpful as well.
Do you have to have a background in learning multiple areas in French, like bio and?
Oh, great question. Yeah, a lot of students will sort of worry about, oh, I want to go study biology at university, and I did biology in English in high school. Like, how is that going to look with French immersion? And so the nice thing is, it's up to you to choose what classes you want to take in French. So maybe you'll only take your elective courses in French, and you'll take all of your main mandatory classes in English. Or maybe you'll decide to take all of your biology in French so that it's consistent throughout your 4 years. What I find tends to be students in the sciences who have this worry. And what I like to highlight is that when you're studying science, it's kind of the same in English and French, honestly. Like one example, maybe you're talking about acids and bases.